All right, Chiefs Kingdom, welcome in to not only a great edition of the AP Film Room, the last draft edition. We are at the end of it, folks. We are coming to you tonight, talking about some of our favorite NFL draft prospects, as we usually do. We go position by position most weeks. But today we're just going to kind of throw a mixed bag out there, some of our favorite guys we want to break down. My name's Ron Kopp Jr. I'm the lead analyst at the site. Caleb James joins me. Nate Christensen joins me as well. Both of them join me every time we do this AP Film Room show. And boys, getting a little sentimental here. I mean, we'll obviously be doing this after the draft too, but last draft, and what do you know? We kind of get some kind of, I wouldn't say crazy, but just kind of some intriguing Chiefs news. Looks like Zay Flowers and Quentin Johnson are both down there throwing with the guys in Texas. Quentin Johnson makes a little more sense, right? He played at TCU. That's where they're practicing. But Caleb, I know you were kind of perplexed by this. What are we doing here? I mean, what do you make of all this?
I wouldn't say I was perplexed by it because the more you think about it, you're like, yeah, this is pretty up the Chiefs' alley. But it's just something you don't hear about. I mean, you don't,
Yeah.
obviously when these guys come take like their top 30 visits to the facility, there's probably a little bit of interaction that goes on with the current players. But you've got reports that out of Camp Pat, they're running some sort of big smokescreen operation. They've got all these guys running in. They're getting top receiver prospects in while the brass is meeting with, the top offensive tackle prospects. They're getting the media all fired up is what they're doing. They're getting us all fired up. So that's the goal. I guess it's working well.
Yeah, that was my question: is the legality of it. But I doubt we're ever going to know exactly, how legal it is for them to do that. Nate, were you excited to see Zay Flowers there, or I don't know? I mean, what do you make of this this late
Yeah,
Chiefs news?
I guess my overall take, I don't think Zay Flowers will even be in the range for Chiefs to trade up. I think I'm kind of looking at the draft order here. I think you would have to be 20 to Seattle, 22 to Baltimore, 23 to Minnesota. That's where Zay Flowers would have to be, and I just don't think he's going to fall that far. But I think the more kind of bigger picture point is that the Chiefs clearly want Patrick Mahomes' input on this, which is rather unique for NFL teams. Like when I was kind of thinking about this morning, I was thinking of like Aaron Rodgers and how often Aaron Rodgers has complained over the years about how he doesn't have any say over the roster, and the Chiefs have pretty actively put out there to Mahomes you will have input on this, and it does kind of set an interesting precedent. I'm frankly surprised the NFL is allowing this. I didn't know if you were allowed to work out with NFL personnel, but I don't know if this is designated as a top 30 visit. I'm just very confused. Schefter sent the one tweet and didn't clarify what exactly that meant, how it kind of works legally. I was a little surprised by it.
Yeah, I was too. But as someone that's a big Zay guy, it is cool to see. I think we're all pretty big fans of Zay Jones here on the show. But that's not who we're talking about. Although I will say, anyone who listened to my radio segment 30 minutes ago, I definitely lied. I said I was going to break down Zay Flowers tonight. I changed my mind. So we know enough about Zay Flowers. We don't need to get into him too much. But I do want to hand over to Nate because you're going to be talking about a guy that Chiefs Twitter is hearing a lot about. It's definitely a guy that's been circling around the Chiefs team as that pick maybe at the end of the first round, maybe even second round too. But why don't you go ahead and talk about your guy?
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. For the most part, I really don't care what people's draft opinions are. I respect everyone's opinions about players. But this week, I feel like people were gaslighting me about defensive end Keion White from Georgia Tech. I don't understand the comparisons to Breeland Speaks or some of the other players he's been compared to. So to just kind of read his profile, because his profile is rather unique. He's 6'5", 285 pounds, 34-inch arms, 34-inch vertical, 9'9" broad, 4'8", 40, 9.55 relative athletic score for defensive end. So for a guy that size, those are very strong measurables. He started out at Old Dominion actually, and he played tight end for 3 seasons. Then he decided to switch to defensive end, and he was pretty good immediately. He made second team All-Conference USA in his first year playing defensive line. But then in 2020, COVID happens. He transfers to Georgia Tech. He's injured in 2021. And then 2022 is his breakout year where he has 41 pressures, 7 sacks, 4 QB hits, a very solid year. The biggest thing with Keion White is he is an older prospect. He is 24 and a quarter years old. He was born in January of 1999. And yes, that matters. It does matter for a draft prospect that you're a little bit older. Where I'm getting caught up with people is that people are comparing him to these bigger, slower defensive ends. and I'll pull up the tape. Keon's a really good athlete. Like, I think people are underestimating how athletic this guy is. But first, let's kind of talk about some of his skills as a run defender. I have 3 clips of him as a run defender here. Here he's playing just straight 3 technique, and you're gonna just see him like get off this snap super well. I'll kind of pause it when the frame kind of shows. Like, you're gonna see him. He has his hips low. His hips are low. He has his inside arm fully extended. He's using length. He's tracking the ball in the running back with his outside eye. Like, this is perfect technique for a guy that's 280 pounds playing defensive tackle. He has completely stunned this block. This zone block is not even going anywhere. He's going to be able to kind of disengage and get inside and make a tackle there. This play, he's playing 5 techniques, so he's kind of playing strong side defensive end. He's going to be head up on this, or he's going to eventually be head up on this tight end. He's just going to demolish his tight end down the line of scrimmage using length, using power, just completely like knocks him in the line of scrimmage. That shows up consistently on his tape. Another play here where he's playing 3 technique. The technique isn't as good on this rep. This is going to be kind of a weak side split zone type of run. His hips are quite high, but he identifies the ball. He is able to kind of drop the pads eventually and swim inside and kind of get a TFL here. So immediately you see this guy is really big and he can play defensive tackle. Like Georgia Tech would have him play defensive tackle, and he can stop the run. He could, like for a bare front, odd front team, he could play in 2 gap well. But I think the thing that gets underrated about Keon is he's compared to some of these poor athletes that are these bigger defensive ends, but Keon can move. He is an absolutely like very good mover. And I have just a ton of clips I want to go through here real quick, but like Georgia's going to be kind of running a little bit of a sprint out here, and Keon's a little bit late to ID this, but like look at him just like stop completely and like change directions. Like, rather simple, he's unblocked, but like most big defensive ends are not able to like turn to 0 and then like break outside again. His game against left tackle Broderick Jones, who people are saying is a top 15 pick, I thought he demolished Broderick Jones kind of all day, to be honest. I thought he got the better of that matchup. And the thing that was kind of surprising is Keon can bend a little bit. For a guy that's 6'5", 285, he has some ability to kind of change directions, bend a little bit. Not to an elite level, but for a guy that big, he can do it. And, he's not going to win around like a 6-7 yard corner. You're not going to see that traditional bend into the flatten. But he's able to kind of use his length to be able to extend a corner a little bit. Like this play, you see a little bit of that lower body bend. He's going to be able to kind of bend this shoulder and kind of rip through the corner a little bit. The ball's out before he can really get the pressure, but he maintains his balance. He uses kind of short steps to kind of unlock the corner. And he was kind of just doing that versus Broderick Jones the entire game. He was being able to kind of unlock his bend. The ball was out before he could really like turn the corner, but he has the ability to kind of use this long arm to kind of reduce the area around the corner. And he can stride and he can kind of flip his hips around the corner. And kind of with that long stride, he can kind of hook around the corner too. So surprising agility for a guy that size overall. This clip's kind of going to see that kind of the flash the hands. And I know people can get nitpicky here and say, well, he's going to stumble. But to hit this outside chop, and like you see him just kind of be able to bend. You see this balance like on his ankle. Like look at Broderick Jones. That dude is falling over. He has no idea what's going on. His pads are lower than Broderick Jones. And he kind of stumbles, but he's even able to recover. Like, this guy is well coordinated. You see the tight end background. He is very well balanced for a guy that, again, is 285 pounds. This is not a 260-pound defensive end. Another kind of push-pull here. I actually wouldn't argue this is his best kind of like pass rush rep. I don't love how he's kind of leaning. But notice the balance to be able to kind of pull through and kind of hook around the corner. Just a couple more reps here real quick. Just playing 3 technique. That's another versatile thing about him. He can rush the passer from 3 technique. Able to use power to kind of attack this inside shoulder. Good balance again to kind of, switch gaps quickly. Last couple reps here. This one's not quite as impressive because he kind of trips, but he's going to slant to this A gap, kind of attack upfield. Like the balance kind of just shows that again. I keep using that word balance because he is a well-balanced, coordinated athlete for a guy that big. This is probably my favorite rep of all. He's playing 3 technique here. He's going to win 2 separate times on this pass rush move. Showing it just a ton of athleticism and a ton of balance. He's going to kind of flash the power. Not the best like contact point, but look at him dip. Look at him dip his shoulder and like rip through. Look at the balance for a guy that big to maintain his feet. And then he's going to spin right back outside, collect the pressure. I don't know. Like I told you guys this week, like compared to Boogie Basham or Dayo Odeyingbo or Tano Passignon or Breland Speaks and all these like big defensive ends that come out these past few years, Keon clears them athletically 10 times over. He can unlock things athletically that none of those other guys did. I agree that at pick 31, the value's not there. I think he would take too long to develop at his age to kind of unlock him. But at the end of round 2, he would be an excellent pick. I would be clamoring A++. I think he's much better than people are giving him credit. And if your criticism of him is that he's not athletic, that's just frankly false.
And that is the key point. The way you dispel the Speaks thing is the athleticism. That's the first thing that stands out to you if you watch him, in my opinion, is how well he's moving at his size. He's a big, thick dude. Like, he is a thick defensive end, and he's moving really well. That's the first thing that stood out to me when I turned on his film. And so that it is surprising that he's getting these kind of comps. Caleb, any Keon White takes before you take over?
Yeah, I mean, real quick, if you want to know why comparing him to Breland Speaks is just a bad comparison, all you would have to do is measure their body fat percentages to figure that one out. So I'm not trying to be mean to Breland Speaks, but those are two guys that were 285 that do not look the same when you put them right next to each other at all.
Well, Breland Speaks is like 6'2" and had short arms.
Yeah,
and he's way slower. Like they don't even play similarly at all.
Breland Speaks had me questioning Brett Veach for like a year and a half because I hated that pick also, but whatever, we got to get past it at some point. So, the USFL had everyone fired up this week. So, all right,
yeah, maybe that's what it was. He got one sack and everyone, I don't know. But go ahead, Caleb. Go ahead.
I don't know how we've gotten through this point. We haven't even really talked about Tui Tuipulotu, which is wild to me because he is such an excellent fit for what the Chiefs do. He's real versatile. He can play edge. He can play a little on the interior. Sometimes he's an off-ball linebacker. He moves pretty well for a bigger guy. They list him at 6'3", 266 is what they pulled up. And, I think those are pretty good, height and weights for him for being an edge in the NFL, maybe a little shorter. Let's just take a look at him. He is a complete bull. He has a ton of power to his game, but he also, he's just a developed rusher. He had double-digit sacks. I believe he had 12 at USC last season. He's a total blue-chip prospect. So let's just take a look at the play, and he's just going to come in. And now, look, this tackle is bracing for the power. He does not expect the hands and quickness, and Tuli gets around the edge. For being like kind of like we're talking about thick guys, for being like a thicker defensive end who relies on power, he does a nice job to bend the arc well. I think this is one of the reasons why he could be a fit for the Chiefs in either the first or the second round. It's kind of hard to put where he's going to be at. But again, he just flashes the hands, tackle is ready for power, and now he's just coming around. He's just blowing the play up. Very good rep there. We'll come back out and just hits him with a nice hand swipe and an inside move, just causing the distraction in the face of the quarterback. The pass is off. And look how wide he is on the snap, Like I mentioned, man, that versatility with him is the big thing. He was like USC's X factor. Terrible defense in USC. It was bad. We all know Lincoln Riley doesn't care about defense. But, when you rely on a team like that, when you rely on playing like that, you want to put an emphasis on like pass rushers who can do a lot of stuff, guys who can go get turnovers and can make plays. And, just out wide like this, he's kind of like their X factor on defense. He did a lot of different things. I think once he gets squared down and settles into one peg in the NFL, which will more than likely be edge rusher, he's going to end up being a lot better. Another rep of him rushing from the wide, just some nice hands. He's, doesn't have, his bend isn't like ridiculous or anything, but he's got enough to make a little bit of an impact. And really, 266 rushing, he's so wide off the screen, the camera doesn't even pick him up at first. He's got a tight end flowing out there. Also, it's pretty impressive, just by the way he's built. Just hits him under, starts to work his way back inside, gets to the quarterback a little bit later. Here he is again. This time he just forklifts him. There's the power, out leverages him, just comes off. He's crushing the pocket. That's where you see like maybe why Spags would like him, just because you can see the kind of physical ability. Look at those hands, though. He's got his hands inside the tackles. He's just completely out leveraging him. And he has a great sense of where the quarterback is. And now he's just working off. He gets his hands up in the air at the last second, really underrated, make the quarterback hold it. Then he disengages, makes the play. Really good, and he's a good run defender also. And I think, you see him being athletic here. He just stands up and, he's 266 taking on a 300-plus pound guard right here. That's impressive. When he gets going into guys, he's hitting them like a freight train. He smacks the guard, stands him up, shucks him in the hole, and now he just comes off for the TFL. really impressive. And I just thought this was fun. He comes at depth like a little run blitz, a la Leo Chenal out of Wisconsin. He can do some things like that also, to where you can see maybe he could be like an EOL outside linebacker stand-up type in some situations also. Ton of versatility. I think he's going to project best to being a defensive end in the NFL. I would be completely ecstatic if the Chiefs took him. He'd be a guy, honestly, you say maybe you have to trade back up in the second round to probably get him. That 50 slot is probably where he'd be best at. Maybe 31 is a little too high. But overall, he's one of those guys where, his ceiling may not be the highest, but he's got a really high floor. You think he's probably going to be a safe, consistent player in the NFL for quite a while.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Thule as well, and so was our guy Rocky. Rocky put him 4th in his edge rushing rankings, which was awesome because I love me some Thule. All right, well, Nate, I got to give you the question then. I mean, if those two guys are on the board at pick, somewhere in the second round, is it Keion White for you?
So I just talk about Dewey Pelote for a minute. He's got. I sent out a tweet a few weeks ago. I could see him going round 1 and round 5, and I bet they both make sense because he's got just such a insane profile. He was like 280, 290 in college. He kept dropping weight, but he played way bigger. Really short armed. He dropped a bunch of weight and he kind of declared himself to be an edge. But we have no athletic testing on him. So we have no idea what he actually would look like as an edge rusher. But in Tui Pelote's defense, he was wildly productive in a scheme that basically requires no technique. So he was still able to be very productive in a just scheme that isn't really enhanced for defensive linemen. Honestly, he's super young. I would have loved to see him transfer to Ohio State last year, to have another year in college, to have a cleaner projection. I like him. I would take Keion White more. I think Keion's a little bit safer. I think Tui Pelote would need a couple of years of seasoning before he could really play off the edge in the NFL. I think Keion White could give me kind of, I just think for, Keion's another guy that doesn't have a lot of experience, and I think he already has better college film. So, but they're both good. I do like Tui Pelote, and I see the traits, and I do think he's going to be a good NFL player.
Well, hey, and I'll say to that too. You mentioned Keion White being a little older of a prospect. Thule is very young. It was only his third year in college last year. So that's always the hardest part to me. A lot of times when you're doing these positional rankings, is how much do you take that into account? Because if Thule was in school for another 2 years and had more experience at another school, all of a sudden maybe we're thinking about him way different in the draft. So it is funny how that works. And but yeah, those two guys, definitely two exciting prospects, kind of in that day 2 range. It seems like. I think realistically, I think both of them had that 31 kind of flirtation, but I think we're right. I think they're about day 2, 50s, 60s kind of pick. The guy I'm about to talk about though is not an edge rusher. A lesser known player in this draft. I'm gonna go a little later than that too. I think Parker Washington, the Penn State wide receiver. He is someone that I've become a huge fan of just because of kind of what he brings to the table in terms of being this smaller receiver, right? We know this NFL draft class is full of small receivers. I mean, we've talked about it on here. It's incredible. But he kind of is the unique one of the small receivers. You see the 5'9", 5'10" height, and you're thinking, okay, he's just he's going to be a similar kind of player as the rest of them. Well, he's not. He's really not. He's a much different player than the rest of the smaller guys in this class. Came in at 205 pounds. He was one of the only less than 6 foot receivers, over 200 pounds at the combine. And you're going to see that. Come out in his film, his weight kind of play out, because kind of the first thing you notice about him is how strong he plays. Just as a ball carrier, he actually kind of does remind me a little bit of Juju Smith-Schuster in that way. Because he's not going to be the fastest guy. He's not going to be necessarily the quickest guy, I would say. But once he gets the ball in his hands, he is tough to tackle, man. The corner, especially obviously corners and safeties, I'm mostly referring to, but he just does not go down easy. It's actually, I think it makes sense why Dane Brugler of The Athletic gave him the Golden Tate comp, because I do think he has a lot of those abilities as just a playmaker in space with the ball in his hands. But at the same time, he's not going to be the quickest, the fastest, but he's going to be able to make contested catches too, which I'm going to show you here. That was the really cool thing about him. He has the 10 and an 1/8 inch hands. I'm going to go back to that play right there because it is a really good rep. 10 and 1/8 inch hands, and it shows up. Those are the 5th biggest hands of all receivers at the NFL Combine this year. And you're going to see it's why he makes a lot of catches at Penn State. He made 5 of the 7 contested catch targets he had last year. I don't think this would count as a contested catch right here. The one I just showed you where he kind of reaches back, but he has that catch radius for a small, shorter guy. I mean, he can go up and get it. He can go over a guy. He can also just catch it tight in traffic. You're going to see another one where he reaches out, and this is a catch. You know, they did call this a catch. It upheld. You know, he got that thing all the way to the ground. So he's a guy that I really like. You know, in those middle rounds for the Chiefs to bring in. The thing is, he is a little similar to Sky Moore, right? In some instances, you know, he played running back in high school, and I think you kind of see that in the way he runs with the ball in his hands at times, which obviously was kind of some of those first clips. So he is a little similar to Sky Moore in that way. But again, I think he might be a little bit better of a receiver right now, because I think he had to be a very good receiver in the Big Ten. You know, Penn State spreads it out a little more than other Big Ten offenses. I'd say they like to throw the ball, even though their quarterback was very inaccurate at times. And it's why maybe Parker Washington has such good experience with the catch radius. And honestly, it's why Jahan Dotson had so much experience in it last year. And I was a huge fan of Jahan Dotson. So I just really see him being a guy that the Chiefs could bring in, again, in these middle rounds where it's not this high investment, but man, he could play right away and give you quality snaps. The thing is, he's just not an elite athlete. We didn't get any testing from him this offseason because he did have an ankle injury that actually shortened his 2022 season. And so he's a guy that we kind of just mentioned with Thule. We don't know athletic testing, and his athletic testing might have been really bad because you're not going to see this elite speed. I mean, even the route right there, you're not going to see this elite breaking ability, right? He's not breaking in and out of his routes very impressively necessarily. But again, you know, I really think he's just a playmaker. And again, these last 2 clips I'm going to show, he just brings a little bit in the blocking game too. And I think that's important for the Chiefs. You know, having that weight, you know, he brings a pop, you know, he does. And I think they're kind of missing a little bit of that from the receiver core right now, having maybe a guy that's a little stronger, being able to play at the point of attack. I think Sky's going to get there. So I do think it might be a little redundant of what Sky wants to be in this offense. But hey, man, I just really like this guy. I think the contested catchability at his size is impressive. And, you know, I kind of like that Golden Tate comp, man. I like it. It's probably quite a bit of a stretch, but he's definitely one of my guys in this class. You have another offensive player, though, Nate, that is definitely an exciting guy. But do you have any Parker Washington takes, or do you just want to get into Tank Bigsby?
Not really, just a solid, good player. I'd be round 4, sounds perfect for him, possession slot. Talk about the other guy. I'm talking about another running back, a guy that I didn't watch when we did the running back show, but since then I've really kind of grown to like. Kind of underrated, Tank Bigsby, the running back from Auburn. Again, kind of just read his profile real quick. 5'11" and 5/8 inches, 210 pounds. So real thick running back. 4.56 40, which isn't great, but 1.54 10-yard split. That's pretty good. 4-star recruit coming out of high school, just a very like touted running back, had offers from like Alabama, all the big schools. The thing about Bigsby, I get that one messed up a bunch. That kind of shows that is he's kind of a big power back for the most part, but I actually think he has really good vision and kind of start, stop kind of acceleration. And I'll kind of show that on this first clip here. Alabama's going to send like a run blitz off the edge. Will Anderson's getting in the backfield. There's a cornerback off screen that's going to come. And once Bigsby kind of recognizes that, to kind of be able to just like stop to a dime, kind of cut backwards, and then still have the burst to hit the sideline. He's not the most like agile on the open field. You won't see him make a ton of cuts, but he has a ton of short area explosiveness, and I think that really stands out. Not the best angle. I had to get the broadcast angle from the Penn State game, but I thought his Penn State game was pretty impressive for the most part. He's going to get the vision to kind of hit this backside gap here. He's able to kind of avoid multiple tackles for loss, kind of accelerate. I think he's got really good vision and contact balance. I think that's quite underrated about him as a player. This is going to be split zone. He's going to hit this defensive back with kind of a nasty crossover, and he's going to swing inside with the ball. He's pretty one cut, I would say, for the most part. He's not going to make a guy like miss in space, but as a one cut runner, he's pretty dynamic. Again, that short area explosiveness, that's going to show up here again. Kind of the vision. This defensive tackle is kind of going to stun. I believe it's the guard kind of right back. I think that's his play. Or it's his linebacker kind of comes through. Again, to be able to just kind of stay upright, break multiple tackles, kind of finish. He did have some productivity as a receiver, 62 catches in his career, 450 yards, which is pretty good for a college running back. Not going to run a ton of advanced routes, but again, kind of the ability to open space here. This play is really impressive. He's going to catch it in the flat, and there is only 20 seconds left in the half, so they were conceding some space, but he's going to make 4 or 5 missed tackles here, kind of cuts right and back inside, kind of recognizes the defender, just kind of be able to kind of cross back inside. The open field speed is really good. It might not be as fast as like Isaiah Pacheco, but he can make dudes miss. He can stay upright, finish through plays. And I think I have Tank Bigsby kind of like my running back 5. I think he's really underrated. I would take him. I would personally, if I was like in a vacuum, I would take him like round 3, like at the end of round 3. But if he's there at like pick 120, I think Bigsby would be a really good player. I think he's a good complement to Isaiah Pacheco. So if he's kind of falling down the boards, I think he'd be a fun running back take.
Yeah, I think he is good. You mentioned the vision. I think that's what stands out to me. A lot of college running backs, you see everything else maybe but like that vision. But I think he does have really good vision between the tackles and the box. Big fan of Tank Bigsby. Yeah, he was like one of the first running backs I watched initially. And I was like, all right, well, I want to put him at 5, but there's got to be other guys I want to put above him. And I couldn't find another one to put above him. So I was with you on him being, I think he was my running back 5. I'd have to go check. Caleb, though, we're going back to edge rusher with you, man. We want to keep talking edge rusher. So who we got?
Real quick, just one thing on Tank Bigsby. Auburn's offensive line's bad. Like all their plays, you can see they're getting pushed into the backfield. You got to evaluate your running backs a little bit differently, knowing what the Chiefs have versus what those guys had. But I am gonna end my draft, our little draft deal on here for me at least with a guy who I kind of started with, Isaiah Land. If you've never heard of him, that's because he went to Florida A&M out of the SWAC. It's a historical HBCU, but basically, he had 19 and a half sacks in 2021, and then this year, his production went down. You'll see why here in a second, but just real quick, taking a look at his height and size. He's 6'3", 236. He would definitely fall, and also some great athletic numbers. Also, I believe 4'6", 240, 34.5-inch vertical. He did really good on most of the agility drills as well. But if you kind of want the Chiefs to draft like a more athletic type of edge rusher, but you're not like totally down for like a guy, for Will McDonald at like 31, you can get a guy with a similar skill set and ability in Land, and it'll probably be, you'll probably be picking him up around the 4th or the 5th round. Now let's get into it. I got him highlighted here in the box, but you can see he's lined up out wide, and you can see initially, man, that is some burst off the football. This is this is a quick pass. The quarterback is going to be getting the ball off. And you can see the left tackle even thinks he has time to go down and, help his guard out on that 4-eye right there. But he really doesn't, because he realizes he goes down and he's already beat. I mean, you see that first step off the ball. It's impressive. He just fires it in, gets off, and then he just hits a little bit of bend to get around the corner. So that's what kind of ability he has as far as, being able to bend the arc. And here we'll see it again. And this play is crazy. He gets upfield, contacts. I don't understand how he physically even makes this play the way he is. Like, the tackle is in position. This is not a bad spot for this tackle to be in. He gets to right here, and he's like, I'm going to start to bend. I'm starting to bend. The tackle is like, I need to push this guy upfield. He sticks out his arm and somehow grabs the quarterback by the waist as he's trying to throw. The throw ends up being offline, but I still can't figure out quite how he is able to wrap his arm around this guy. Well, he's got the tackle draped all over him. It's just a great effort play, a great play to sell out, and he gets to the quarterback. And, he is very good off the edge. And one of the places they also used him in at Florida A&M was like some of these blitzes and twist games, stunt games. You can see that balance right there to stay on his feet. The running back attempts to come in and take him out. You can see he just gets off the ball quick, clear line to the quarterback. No, it wasn't the running back. It was a guard, pardon me, on that. But you can see, the O-line is late to shift it off. So he's coming now maybe a little out of control. He's got the bend. He stays on his feet and re-accelerates back through to bring down the quarterback on the play for the sack. So how do you lose 10 sacks in a season? You start getting double-teamed a lot by stuff like this. And this is honestly a bunch of crap. He gets tackled by this running back right here. Obviously, I don't know, Dion and all the guys down there at Jackson State, this is who they're playing. They obviously wanted to send him a message, but you could see the kind of attention he had. He was public enemy number one for these teams. They knew if you want a chance to beat Florida A&M, you have to stop this guy. And I think that says a lot to the kind of player he is. That this team felt they had to have a running back and a tackle on him, and the guy had to basically tackle him to bring him down. And here he is from the Senior Bowl, and you can see that flexibility, bend, and just the speed off the edge one more time. He's only 233 pounds. He doesn't have the size. He can still add a little bit of weight. I don't think he has like that size to be an every down player. But in the 4th and the 5th round, if you like his value there, you're going to be, and it's 3rd and long. Let's put him out there wide. With the Chiefs, maybe we have Chris Jones up the middle, so he's going to press the pocket. Let's get some more athletic guys. And I think it's, people dismiss guys all the time because they're like, he doesn't fit the Spags type. At some point, Spags is going to have to evolve a little bit. And I think maybe Joe Cullen being there can help him, figure out some different options for defensive end. It'll be something interesting to keep an eye on. But, I think it's cool seeing small school guys, go on to the NFL. And I especially think it's cool with a guy like him. With the draft in Kansas City, the Chiefs have historically, he won the Buck Buchanan Award. So the Chiefs, the Chiefs, back in the day, the Chiefs historically, the AFL, they were the first team to recruit or to scout a lot of the HBCUs. Yes. I think it would be very fitting if Land ended up in Kansas City, the year they're hosting it. And the fact that he was an HBCU standout is just impressive also. And I'm wishing him the best of luck.
Man, you stole my factoid. I was going to just throw that out there and be like, yeah, of course he should be a Chief because he won the Buck Buchanan Award. Yeah, no, you're right. He was a very dominant player 2021, very exciting player to watch. He's just a little light. But, hey, James Houston, the 4th last year, was light as well. He came from Jackson State. They brought him in on a visit, didn't draft him, didn't take him, and he had 6 sacks for the Lions. So I think Land, has a similar – if he can be that designated pass rusher, I think he could make a similar impact right away as James Houston last year. Well, let's round this out. I got another small school guy, not quite as small as Florida A&M, but Old Dominion. I'm going to talk about the offensive tackle from there, Nick Saldiveri, a guy that has kind of grown on a lot of, I think, Chiefs Twitter. Someone I kind of got to late in the process, admittedly, because he was kind of someone that I kind of heard, hey, maybe he's a guard. So maybe, I was trying to find as many offensive tackles as possible. But, man, this guy can play offensive tackle, in my opinion. He came into the combine at 6'6", 318, which, on the surface of that, you're thinking, oh, of course he can. I mean, that's an offensive tackle list. Well, his arms are a little short, right? He's got the 33.5-inch arms, which is or 33 1/4, I want to say. So it's just below that threshold. You really want to get to close to 34 inches if you can. But this is where I'm gonna turn it on because I do think when you turn on the tape, he played right tackle for Old Dominion in 2022. Although he did play some right guard as well for one specific game. Has experience at guard. Actually took some center snaps or was snapping, I should say, at center in the Senior Bowl. So he did get a look doing that, but. Man, he does just come across as a guy that can play tackle because of how he gets off to me. I just feel like that's tackle footwork, man. I mean, that guy, he has clean, I wouldn't say clean. Clean is not the right word for his footwork. I would just say it's smooth and it's efficient for the most part. It's just clean is not the right word because I do think sometimes, depending on the type of player, he can kind of come out maybe, that's not even a great first step right here, honestly. I mean, you want to see your lead foot kind of go closer or, more towards kind of that player right away. But in his pass sets, I think he does come off in a pretty solid manner, kind of just smooth manner, kind of calm. I think calm is the word I used in his draft profile. I like how he's just kind of calm, kind of has his hands in a good striking position at first, and kind of just can sit a little bit in his, kind of drop his hips and can kind of just, play the offensive tackle position. Now, obviously, he's going up against guys that are way worse than what he's going to be going up against in the NFL. But again, I just think he has enough of that get off where, you kind of see that kick step out where it gives him that width to get out there and stop number 3 from getting any sort of edge penetration. Number 3 doesn't really look like much of a speed rusher, I'd say. A little bit of a thicker guy. But you just kind of see the hand striking and then the hand placement on the hand placement's going to be a little sporadic, right? A little all over the place sometimes, but he gets the job done. I would say, he gets his hands in the right in inside, I should say, and kind of holds them there. Now the thing is, he can get a little off balance, right? And I think that's where maybe the guard stuff comes in, where people don't really see maybe his balance. Balance is a word we use a lot today, and I don't think sometimes he has the greatest balance in terms of, and honestly, I didn't show many clips of his negative plays, but I just think he can get off balance when guys rush him inside, set up the speed and then come inside on the power, but at the same time, right here someone comes in on after the speed and he bullies them pretty good, so he has the movement skills, right? His feet give him that movement skill to mirror inside. It's just a lot of times he doesn't bring his feet cleanly with him inside, and you're going to see maybe some off balance reps. And again, I'm really curious to see what it's going to look like against an NFL kind of competition, because I could see some of the limitations already, and you're talking about him playing against guys in the Sun Belt Conference. So the thing is, though, if he were to play guard, I get it, because the dude comes off and makes and moves dudes in the run game. I mean, you're seeing these down blocks right here. Obviously, we already talked about the footwork, him coming off hard, but man, he really does latch on well. It could be cleaner. Again, I think his whole game could be cleaner, but again, he's just an offensive lineman. He's just a good football player. I really think he could play right tackle. I know a certain local draft guide comped him to Mitchell Schwartz, which that's pretty high praise. I definitely wouldn't put that on him, but obviously they're talking about the play style, and I think the style is a little similar there, right? Where maybe not the longest arms, maybe not the most athletic or the most just kind of the most physically dominating, but dude's gonna have and I think he's gonna develop into having some clean footwork and a clean pass set. I think he's got the fundamentals, the basics down. I think he just needs the right offensive line coach. I know a guy here in Kansas City, so I'm definitely a Nick Saldiveri guy. He's probably a third rounder, I would say, maybe fourth round, depending on what's going on. I know, or Nate, did you get a look at Nick Saldiveri at all? And if not, just any final takes as we round this thing out.
I did. I love Nick Saldiveri. I think he would.
Good.
You draft him around the end of the third round, and I think he would win the right tackle job instantly. I think he's a much better prospect than Lucas Niang was, or at least Lucas Niang post injuries, I would say, maybe in fairness. But I think you would draft him, and I think you'd have a day one right tackle. So yeah, I'll let Caleb talk about it, but I'm a big Saldiveri fan.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I would agree with you. Yeah, if he were to come into Kansas City, I do think he would take that right tackle spot. He'd win it. So what do you think, Caleb?
I think one of the only things that would kind of make me concerned about him, I think, like you mentioned, his footwork from the lower half down, he's got it figured out. But it does concern me just a little bit. He doesn't have like a ton of tape versus like an elite rusher, because the first time you go against a Khalil Mack bull rush, a Joey Bosa bull rush, a Max Crosby bull rush, it's going to be something he hasn't experienced before in his life, because those guys are bringing ridiculous amounts of power. That's kind of why when you're drafting small school offensive linemen, you do have to just kind of go off of traits a lot of the time, is because they don't have, that film versus those elite rushers. And that's where I put like most of my stock into evaluating guys, is I want to see dudes on dudes. I want to see how they react to other top guys. Now, he has all the tools to continue to develop, but I think it would be maybe a little bit slower than some other people are, saying for whatever. I just think that he needs to get more. I just think he needs to get a little bit better with his hands and how he uses them. The Chiefs have put a ton of stock in how their tackles use their hands. You saw in 2 or 3 years how Wiley kind of developed his hands. I think that would be something he had to work on. I don't know if he'd come in to be the day one starter right away, but he would end up being the long-term option at right tackle if he were drafted.
Yeah, no, you're totally right on the competition thing. I mean, even one of his games against a Power 5 school last year against Virginia, he had to play right guard, and so you didn't even get that tape of him playing against another Power 5 team at right tackle. So definitely someone that you're projecting, but I like what I see. Would be a huge fan of him, again, as Nate mentioned, maybe late in the third, where the Chiefs pick, obviously late in the third. So, well, fellas, I mean, we're wrapping up tonight. It was a very fun show talking about guys that intrigue us, some of our guys in the draft class. And this is it. The next time you kind of hear from us, we'll probably be reacting to who the Chiefs picked. We'll see if they pick any of the guys we talked about here on the offseason show. But appreciate everyone watching. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Make sure you're following all of us on Twitter if you want to get the draft takes immediately. That's where you're going to get them. We all love to tweet, especially draft night. So make sure you're checking us out. Make sure you're following the site, arrowheadpride.com. And just keep listening to the podcast channel. Keep tuning into the YouTube page. We'll keep bringing out good stuff. And we'll just catch you next time we talk to you. Thank you very much.